What does tomorrow hold? In this video, we're going to answer that question by looking at a passage in James chapter 4, verses 13 to 17. He begins in verse 13 with the expression, "Come now, you who say, today or tomorrow we will go to such and such a city, spend a year there, buy and sell, and make a profit." And that expression, "come now," or some Bibles translate it, "go to now," it was actually a phrase used for calling attention or to get somebody's attention, and that's how it's used here. And what he describes here happens all the time, where people make plans, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, and you'll notice in his hypothetical here, although, as I said, many people have done this, he says, today or tomorrow we're going to go to such and such a city, we're going to spend a year there, we're going to buy and sell and make profit. So they've got it all planned out. They know where they're going to go, they know how long they're going to stay, they know what they're going to do while they're there. And as I said, this happens all the time, where people have goals, and it's good to have goals. I would encourage you to have goals, but what good really are those goals if you leave God out of your plans? And that's something people are doing all the time. But the truth of the matter is, no matter what you believe, the future is really not in our hands, it's in His hands. Because the truth of the matter is, we don't know what tomorrow holds. Notice he says in verse 14, whereas you do not know what will happen tomorrow. We really don't even know what will happen later today. He says, for what is your life? And he uses a really good illustration. For what is your life? It is even a vapor that appears for a little while and then vanishes away. James, and this is the Lord's half-brother, who's the human author of this passage, reminds us of the uncertainty of life, and he compares life to a vapor. He uses this illustration comparing life to a vapor, or some Bibles translate it with mist or fog, but we understand the meaning, and everybody has experienced fog. One moment it's not there, and the next minute it is there, or one moment it's there, and the next thing it's gone. And I often use this passage at a funeral, even though deep down we all know that we're going to die someday. It's a topic that we really don't want to talk about. And most people live under the illusion that we have all the time in the world. And of course, the truth of the matter is, no matter what you believe, life is short. And that's the image or the illustration that he gives here with life, comparing it, the brevity of life, to like a fog or a mist. In Proverbs 27, verse 1, it warns us, it says, do not boast about tomorrow, for you do not know what a day may bring forth. And that is so true. Life is compared to a breath in Job chapter 7, verses 7 and also verse 9, and in Psalm 39, verses 5 and 6. A breath or a sigh. In other words, it's very short. And of course, we have an illustration, a parable that the Lord gives, which I would encourage you to look at. I actually did another video on that. I'll put a link in the description, about the rich fool in Luke chapter 12, verses 16 to 21. A man who had a good crop, and he decided to tear down his old barns and build newer barns. And God said to him, you're a fool, because tonight your life is required of you. And that's the way people are. We just think we're going to live forever, even though the reality is, and we know when we sit down and really think about it, that we're not. So James is giving us this illustration that really our life is not in our hands, it's in God's hands, it's in His control. He says in verse 15, instead you ought to say, if the Lord wills, we shall live and do this or that. The truth of the matter is, our lives are in God's hands. They're not in our hands. It's just a simple fact. Now, there's things that we can do to make our lives better, and I would encourage you to do that, to eat right and healthy and exercise and all those things. But the fact of the matter is, even this very day, this very moment, there will be people who are healthy and seemingly doing all the right things, that this will be their last day on earth, and often at no fault of their own. He says, rather than saying, here's what I'm going to do, we need to say, if the Lord wills, I'll do this or that. He says in verse 16, but now you boast in your arrogance. All such boasting is evil. We probably don't think of it that way, but he says when we boast, when we brag about what we're going to do, when the reality is we don't even know what today or tomorrow holds, we're actually sinning. He says all boasting here is evil. Verse 17, therefore to him Who knows to do good and does not do it, to him it is sin. You know, we tend to only think of sin as doing wrong, but James tells us that it's also sin if we do not do what we should. We have sins of commission and sins of omission, and sins of commission are things that God has told us not to do, and we do those things. We commit those sins, like to lie or to cheat or to steal. But sins of omission is when we don't do the things that God has told us to do. And that too is sin. Like, for example, read our Bible and pray and go to church and all these things that the Bible clearly tells us to do. If we don't do those things are sin as well. You know, I heard one guy describe it this way: to do nothing is sin. And a lot of people will dismiss everything I'm saying because they don't agree with it. And so rather than applying these truths to their life, because the truth is they don't know what tomorrow holds either in terms of their life. They'll brag and they'll boast, as James says, but the reality is their life is not in their hands either, whether you acknowledge God's existence or not. And we are commanded as Christians to follow the Lord Jesus Christ. You know, Jesus said over and over in John's Gospel, especially chapters 13, 14, 15, 16, in that section, he said, if you love me, keep my commandments. And he said that multiple times. If you love me, keep my commandments. When I was a kid, we used to play a game. Of course, it was a simpler time back then, but we played a game called Follow the Leader. And if you're watching this and you're familiar with that, it's really not complicated. We would go outside on a beautiful summer day, and you would take turns. Somebody was the leader, and whatever the leader did, everybody else had to follow. Again, very simple game, but it was a simpler time. But you know, Jesus is our leader as Christians, and we are to follow him. Someone said years ago, I may not know what tomorrow holds, but I know who holds tomorrow, and that is so true. Well, thank you for visiting The Essential Truth. Thank you for watching this video. Please like the video, give it a thumbs up. Also share it with someone that might be encouraged and challenged by it. And subscribe to the channel. All those things are helpful to the channel and very much appreciated. Also, I invite you personally to check out some of the other videos on the channel. There's quite a few that are short Bible studies and devotions just like this one. Also on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I upload Bible verses of the day, and many have expressed an appreciation for those as well. So once again, thank you for visiting The Essential Truth. This is Pastor Dave. You have a blessed day.